Today, we're going to dig into the story of a project so huge, so audacious, that people literally called it madness. We're talking about a 363-mile ditch carved through a total wilderness that ended up building an American empire. This is the story of the Erie Canal, and trust me, it's a revolutionary tale that has a lot to teach us about vision, risk, and, what it actually takes to build the future. Okay, so to get why this canal was such a big deal, you have to understand the problem back in the early 1800s. America was a nation divided, not by politics, but by, well, a giant mountain range. This quote just nails the economic absurdity of the time. You had this massive, resource-rich interior of the continent that was basically locked away. Trying to do business was slow, it was crazy expensive, and a lot of the time just plain impossible. And the source of all this trouble? It was a massive natural barrier that stood right between the Atlantic coast and the nation's entire future. Yeah, this map really shows you what they were up against. The Appalachian Mountains weren't just mountains. They were like a continental wall. They were just choking off trade, strangling settlement. All those resources in the Midwest couldn't get to markets in the East. The full potential of the United States was just stuck, trapped behind this huge obstacle. But then there was this one guy, a New York politician named DeWitt Clinton, who saw a way through. He came up with this radical, kind of crazy solution: a man-made river that would just cut right through the wilderness. And his idea was so bold, so out there, that most people just laughed at him.
And we're not just talking about your average person being skeptical. When Thomas Jefferson, the guy behind the Louisiana Purchase, one of the most forward-thinking people of his time, when he calls your idea a little short of madness, you know you are facing a serious uphill battle. It just shows you how completely nuts the whole concept seemed to basically everyone.
And this slide really lays out the huge political fight that followed. So on one side, you had Clinton, who's dreaming of this water highway that he believed would create an economic empire. And then on the other side, you had his opponents, who were calling it Clinton's folly or Clinton's ditch. They were convinced it was a total fantasy that would bankrupt the state. It was a real battle between this incredible ambition and, let's be honest, pretty reasonable doubt. And here's the number that just scared the daylights out of everyone: $7 million. Now, that might not sound like a lot today, but in the early 19th century, that was an astronomical amount of money. And when the federal government said, nope, not a penny, the whole massive financial risk fell right on the shoulders of New York State. This wasn't just an ambitious project, it was a gamble that could absolutely ruin them. But Clinton didn't give up. He pushed, and in 1817, construction began on what was, at the time, the single largest public works project the world had ever seen. And what's really wild when you look at this timeline is the speed. I mean, think about this. In just 8 years, an army of workers, using the most basic tools, shovels, pickaxes, mules, carved this waterway through hundreds of miles of forest, solid rock, and nasty swamps. And get this, the middle section was already open and making money by 1820, proving the whole crazy idea actually worked. So you have to be asking, how on earth did they pull this off? Well, at the time, America had 0 professionally trained civil engineers. The canal was designed by guys who were basically self-taught surveyors and even lawyers. It was built with the raw muscle of thousands of immigrant laborers and powered by pure, homegrown ingenuity. Things like developing hydraulic cement that could set underwater, or inventing these crazy machines just to pull up giant tree stumps. And then there's the Flight of 5 locks, this incredible staircase of water that lifted boats straight up a 60-foot cliff. It was just a triumph of grit. And when the canal finally opened in 1825, the impact wasn't just big. It was immediate. It was revolutionary. It unleashed an economic tidal wave that completely reshaped the nation. This chart tells you everything you need to know. Before the canal, if you wanted to ship a ton of goods from Buffalo to New York City, it would set you back about $120. After the canal opened, that cost dropped to just $6. That's a reduction of over 90%. This one change completely unlocked the economy of the American heartland. And remember that massive $7 million gamble that everyone was so terrified of? Well, it paid off, and it paid off fast. The canal brought in so much money from tolls that it paid for its entire construction cost in just 9 years. Clinton's folly turned out to be one of the smartest, most profitable public investments in American history. And this canal is the reason New York is called the Empire State. New York City blew past rivals like Boston and Philadelphia to become the undisputed financial capital of the country. And all along the canal's path, brand new cities, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, just exploded out of the wilderness, all powered by this new artery of American commerce. So, okay, it's pretty clear the Erie Canal was a smashing success. But if we look back at it with a modern eye, a really interesting question comes up. Was it actually a well-managed project? And what can its story teach us about the huge projects we try to build today? To answer that, we can borrow a tool from a National Bureau of Economic Research paper. It's called the cost overrun ratio. It's actually a really simple idea. You just take the final actual cost of a project and divide it by the original estimated cost. It gives us a handy, if imperfect, way to score how well we manage these massive public investments. So for the Erie Canal, that ratio is 1.46. It ended up costing about 46% more than the first estimate. Now, that might sound kind of high, right? But wait, we have to put that number in context. And this is where the story gets really mind-blowing. Take a look at Boston's Big Dig, right? A modern engineering marvel. Its cost overrun ratio was over 5.21. That means it cost more than 5 times its original budget. So by this modern standard, the Erie Canal, built 200 years ago by self-taught engineers with shovels, was an unbelievably well-managed project. It really makes you wonder if our ability to manage these huge projects has actually gotten worse over time. Which leaves us with one final thought. The Erie Canal was born from a vision that almost everyone else called madness. It proved that a big, bold, public investment, even one that gets laughed at, can completely redefine a nation's future. So it makes you ask the question, what is the Clintons' folly of our time? What's that audacious, seemingly impossible idea that we're all dismissing today that might just be the thing that builds the world of tomorrow?